My name's Angelo, and welcome to We Want Picks. This is the only channel dedicated to UFC fight picks and DraftKings lineups run by MMA insiders and professional fighters. Every week, I join Dan Kramer and Nick Newell, two longtime professional fighters that have fought at the highest levels on the planet, as well as Jacob Lyons, a skinny kid from Indiana. So join us every single week for our full fight card breakdowns, our individual fight card breakdowns, our betting guide, and our DraftKings lineups. So we're going to go a little out of order today because Nicholas Newell is in fight camp training for a fight that we can't announce just yet. But we're going to go ahead and start with Luis Violent Bob Ross Pena versus Alexander Munoz because Nick shared the cage with Alexander Munoz for 3 full rounds. So why don't you give us that breakdown? Let us know who you think that wins this fight and how this one goes.
Yeah, very frustrating fight for me. I got out wrestled and I got controlled. He hit me with a good elbow. But other than that, it was like fighting a statue. He was so solid and such a dense person, and he was very good at what he was good at. And even though I honestly looked at his other fights and he struck and he was knocking people out. He knocked one guy out in like 3 seconds. And I was like, oh, he's going to try to stand with me. So I was like throwing at him and I had my moments, but he ended up getting the takedowns and the control and winning. So good on him. His UFC debut, he looked a little out of it. He was hesitant. He wouldn't even throw any punches. And he was just like kind of shooting from like super far away and getting stuffed and completely outclassed by what's that guy's name? Nasrat Hapharquest. And I was like, wow, I wish he kind of fought me like that. But I think the difference maker between me and Hapharquest is Hapharquest hits like an absolute truck. I'm more of a tricky striker that cuts angles and throws and hits volume and stuff like that. And Hapharquest has that one shot KO power that he's shown before, that I haven't. And Luis Pena also is even maybe less of a power striker and more of a pitter patter volume striker who's been taken down actually many times in the past and has failed to mount takedowns on a lot of people that he's fought. So I think he's a great fighter. I just think the power is going to be different. Munoz isn't going to be afraid to get in there and mix it up with him because he's not afraid to get knocked out with one punch. He'll eat the punches and go for the takedown, and he's going to get the takedown and kind of hold Pena there. Pena's not going to be able to get back up, and he's going to control the fight and win it that way.
Yeah. So my question, first of all, I agree with that. Munoz is my pick, but I'll break that down in a second. But my question to you, Nick, is in that Munoz fight, obviously his wrestling credentials are phenomenal. I think he's the head wrestling coach at Team Alpha Male now. So his wrestling is absolutely rock solid. He used it against you. But you did almost catch him in that guillotine. I don't remember if that was the second or the third. Do you think Pena, I mean, your whole thing, you're a jiu-jitsu black belt, obviously, but you're like all of your submission wins, and there's a lot, are usually in scrambles and less traditional, jiu-jitsu type setups. Do you think Pena poses that same threat and he's going to snatch something up? Or, really it's, elbows in, chin down, and Munoz is just going to ride him out and beat him up?
Yeah, he does have long arms and tricky. I know that in my fight, when he took me down, I looked at previous fights and he kind of was like a little susceptible to putting his arms in the wrong spot. So I went to throw up a triangle and he elbowed me in the face really hard. So I was like, okay, I'm going to just stand up. And I was able to get up on him a couple times, but he was really good at controlling me and getting that wrist ride when I was trying to get up. Pena, I don't know if he's going to be as good as getting back to his feet. And he might chill a little bit and he might be a little trickier off his back. But I don't think that he's going to be able to like get his legs or his arms around someone as powerful as Munoz.
Yeah, I agree with all of that. Honestly, I think Alexander Munoz should be the favorite. I'm surprised he's an underdog. He's probably an underdog because he lost to Nasrat Hapharquest the way he did. But now we know how ridiculously good Nasrat is. And if Nasrat fought Luis Pena, those odds would be like minus 450. So I'm very surprised at this line. I think Nasrat is like just next level phenomenal. And I think that wasn't factored into these odds here. I think Munoz should be the favorite, but Jacob, you made a ridiculously stupid face when I said Nasrat would pummel Luis Pena. So what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I love Violent Bob Ross. He's a one of my favorite fighters to watch, just because it's so crazy seeing him in that weight class, because his length and his height is he just towers over everyone. And I think this fight goes. I think Alexander Munoz better fight the way he fought against Nick, because he better keep it close in there, because Pena is a submission threat off his back. And I think his length's going to give him real problems off his back. Nick almost caught him in that guillotine, and I think he was lucky to get out of it. I think Pena catches him in something, especially on his back with those long legs. Nick, you mentioned you saw something where his arms are in a bad position sometimes. Pena grabs an arm with those long legs, and it's a triangle. It's something like that.
Yeah, I also went for a triangle, and he elbowed me in the face so hard my head bounced off the mat, and I had like a huge gash. It's probably the only time he really hit me in the fight, but man, it was hard.
Yeah, well,
Jacob's really walking a fine line here, trying to say Luis Pena beats him, but you can't.
If you elbow him in the head, he's got that like cushion behind him, all that hair, so he doesn't bounce his head off.
Yeah, you're right. That's a good point.
He's got that. So he's got that made. But yeah, I think Munoz definitely. This is definitely more of a pick'em fight, because I think Pena's got kind of one way to win. Even though I do think Pena is an underrated striker. If for some reason he can stuff a couple takedowns, I think he's got the striking advantage in this matchup. But I definitely think Alexander Munoz is going to get the takedowns. I think he's probably going to control most of the fight. I just think Pena finds a way to pull it out, like Nick almost pulled it out. So I have Pena in my lineup just because it's Violent Bob Ross. I can't not put him in my lineup, and I have him winning the fight.
Yeah, so we're opposites on that. Munoz is in my lineup, and Nick, we forgot to mention, is he in your lineup? Or
yes, he is.
Yeah.
No, he's in my lineup.
So Dan, which way are you going on this? Are you going with the wrestler or the grappler? All right, Dan, you're on mute.
Jeez,
your light has been off half the time. This is unbelievable. It's like calling my grandmother. Oh my God.
My God. It's still not working.
Turn the light on so we can see you, and then let us know who wins this.
Clap on, clap off.
Pena is my pick by sub.
Did you say Pena is the pick or Munoz?
I don't know what he said.
I think he said Pena is the pick by sub. I just walked it off.
I think.
Well, there you have it, folks.
You guys ready to start?
Yeah, is that what that was? A temper tantrum?
9:45, right?
Was that a temper tantrum?
No, my whole
by sub.
Yeah, I said Pena by sub. My whole computer legitimately froze, and I could not get Zoom to come up to turn mute on. Off.
So you think
Pena's ATT? Pena's ATT. So Dan's biased.
Yeah, there it is.
He's well prepared. No, I mean. All kidding aside, I think this is a close fight. Munoz for sure has the wrestling edge, but I think Pena. Jacob said it earlier. I was on mute, so I couldn't agree with him. But Pena's got good striking. He's got tough length to deal with. I think Munoz will get some takedowns, but Pena is a threat off of his back, so I think he can make it interesting with some subs, some scrambles, and I think. If he creates those scrambles and they're on their feet a lot, I think Pena wins the striking match. I mean, Munoz has some power, but I really see a few different paths to success for Pena via striking or sub. And Munoz, I see winning by wrestling only, really, or landing a big shot. But I think overall skill-wise, Pena is the better, more experienced, seasoned fighter. Overall skill set wise. But with that being said, one of the toughest individual skills to deal with is wrestling. So I think it's going to be a close fight, but I'm pulling for Pena. I'm not touching it in DraftKings because, man, he is priced like a heavy favorite at $8,700. And anytime you fight somebody who's that good at wrestling, even if you do pull off a win, you might not get a lot of points on the way to it. So I'm not touching it for DraftKings, but my pick is ATT all the way, Luis Pena.
And real quick, the DraftKings point is a good point. First of all, turn on a light so we can see your face. Second of all, the DraftKings point is a good point because the new DraftKings scoring that scores control time and takedowns are 5 points really favor Munoz in this. Even with a Pena win, you probably won't score nearly as much as an Alexander Munoz win. So he's in my lineup. He's cheap. I'll take it all day. We're split as a group, so this will be an interesting one to see how it ends up. But it's a fun one, and we're looking forward to it. Opening the UFC Vegas 24 card, we have Jessica Penne versus Lupita Godinez. And this is an interesting matchup because Jessica Penne was supposed to fight Hannah Goldie, which we've broken down in the past, and it was rescheduled for this card, and then now that fight's off. And now she's a big underdog. I think we picked her to win against Hannah Goldie big time, even though she's had, Jessica Penne's had a ridiculously long layoff. But this is a much tougher matchup than she originally had. So, Dan, I'll go to you. Are you going to take the vet with the long layoff, or are you going to take sort of the young up-and-comer who's going to try to make a statement here?
I am not taking Jessica Penne in this fight. I think I did take her in the last one. I think I thought she was going to be motivated to come back after that layoff. I thought it was a more favorable matchup. I believe her last opponent, too, was a similar, up-and-coming 5-0 girl, right? But after watching tape on Lupita Godinez, I don't think this is a good matchup for Penne. So, I watched obviously some of the tape on Penne. She's 1-4 in the UFC. She lost her last 3. She's been off for a few years due to USADA suspension. I think she's been very public about defending herself in that, saying she didn't do it. She got screwed. Almost so much that I kind of believe her a little bit. I don't know. But at any rate, nowadays, to have that long of a USADA suspension, I feel like, she must have done something wrong. But at any rate, she's coming back after a long layoff. She's 37 years old. Oh, yeah, here it is. She's supposed to fight Hannah Goldie, canceled twice. I just think stylistically, this is going to be a tough matchup for her. She's kind of known more for her grappling. Her striking is so-so, unless she's improved a lot over the last few years. It didn't look bad, but just didn't seem, high-level striker. She's very long, which could create an issue, but I think overall, Lupita Godinez is going to dominate this fight. She's undefeated. She just fought in October, at the end of October, for the LFA title against Vanessa Demopoulos. She won by unanimous decision, but if you guys watch that fight, she pieced up Demopoulos early on in that fight. Her face was split in 9 different spots. She's got great boxing. I was watching her boxing and I was unbelievably impressed. Crisp jab, lead left hook, good feints, counter shots, great combinations, and she always finishes with a hard, clean, straight right. So I was really impressed. And then on top of the boxing, she also has wrestling. She didn't need to use it in that fight. She's got pretty good defensive wrestling, though. So she defended a bunch of takedowns and really just pieced up Demopoulos on the feet. It did get a little dicey in the later rounds, 4th and 5th round. There were some, I think she did eventually end up getting taken down, but she scrambled out of everything. And it's a 5-round fight. So you don't always look your best in the later rounds, but I was very impressed with her. I think this fight, she's going to defend any takedowns that Penne throws her way. And I think striking wise, dealing with the length, she's so good with her footwork, getting in and out. She's fast. She's just, I think she's going to be a potential future contender in this division if she keeps improving at the rate she is. So I'm going to pick her. I'm going to definitely, what's her value in DraftKings?
$9,200.
I think I'm going to spend it on her. I think she's going to score a ton of points.
Wow.
In a decision, piecing her up. And I think she might be able to get a finish too. If you watch that last fight, she had Demopoulos rocked multiple times. And Demopoulos, I don't know how she survived it, to be honest. She was just, it was a title fight, so she's obviously tough and good. She had the belt. So I don't know. I wouldn't be surprised with Penne coming back after 3 years at 37 years old.
4.5 years, I think.
Whatever it is. It's a long time to now face this girl who's fast, good boxing, good wrestling. And she looked like she hit hard too. So I think this is probably the toughest comeback fight you could probably get. So I wouldn't be surprised if there's a finish. The pick is Lupita Godinez, and I'm definitely going to try to put her into my lineup.
Yeah, so that's interesting. So I think, it's funny because I think Jessica Penne might be the more well-rounded fighter overall because of her experience, and she's kind of good everywhere. But it's been multiple years off, and Lupita Godinez has a ton of power, and just her style is a problem. She just comes banging forward, just willing to get in the pocket, willing to throw heavy strikes and just make something happen. And especially, I mean, you're a fighter, right? That's our whole thing is we have professional fighters doing breakdowns. Being out for that long and then coming back and fighting somebody who's not going to give you the time to find a rhythm is a problem. I think it's a bad matchup for multiple reasons. The time off is a big factor. And I think, they probably took this fight thinking, all right, we're getting her on short notice. She's young because this is a short notice fight. Lupita's young. She's taking on short notice. Maybe we'll catch her out of camp or something like that. But I think there's just a lot of questions. We don't really know what Jessica Penne's been doing for the last few years, but even if she's been training, she hasn't been getting those, that cage time is a real thing. So it'll definitely be interesting.
I was going to say those are two caveats. I mean, you call them right out. I didn't mention them, but yeah, Lupita Godinez taking short notice, but I watched one of her interviews. I think her management basically said after her last fight, like, hey, the call's coming, stay ready. So I'm hoping she did. She seemed confident in her interviews. And then Penne with the time off, there's always cage rust, right? But she could have also been improving. You just never know. So those are kind of like two intangibles that you don't know what you're going to get out of both of them. So could make it interesting, but if both versions of their last fight show up, Godinez is going to have a lot of success in this fight, I think.
Well, and I'll hand it over to you in a second, Jacob, but that's my biggest hesitation. So I think Lupita Godinez wins. I think she's a bad matchup. She's got a ton of power. She does have wrestling. I think, Jessica's path to victory would be takedowns. I think that is her path to victory. But with all those questions, the short notice questions, what has Jessica been doing with her layoff questions? I'm not spending $9,200 on that. No way. But, you are, so we'll see what happens there. But Jacob, what are your thoughts here? How do you see this going?
Yeah, I feel bad for Jessica because you guys mentioned it as well. I think her last fight, we all picked her. I think she would have just ran through Hannah Goldie. I think her judo throws and her wrestling, I don't think Hannah was going to have an answer for that. And then she runs into Loopy. She goes by Loopy, is what she goes by. She runs into Loopy, who is a great wrestler. Dan said phenomenal striker. I love the way she level changes. So she'll feint the takedowns and come back up top with a combination. She does that very well. So I definitely think she's going to win the fight. The thing that scares me the most is I've seen a lot of her offensive wrestling, and she's a good offensive wrestler. I haven't seen her really get put in like bad positions. And and Jessica, if anyone can get on your hip and throw you and end up, all of a sudden you're on your back and side control those judo throws. So it'll be interesting to see if that happens, if she scrambles back to her feet and is able to get back to her feet. Because if not, we've seen this happen before with veterans. They get somebody on the ground and they just have better positioning. They just hold them down, and then all of Loopy's weapons are gone. So, I'm staying away from it from the 9,200. I think it could be tougher than people think it will be, but I think Loopy ends up winning the fight. The thing that sold me on her was she mentioned that growing up she was a big WWE fan. So I think that's awesome. So I think Loopy
doesn't that usually like make her your lock of the week or something? Isn't that the sort of stuff that
9,200? Dan, get it together. I can't.
Right, it's got to be underdog. I'm sorry. Right, they got to be.
Pay attention.
Plus 105 underdog. That's what they have to be, right?
Yeah.
So I do think, I think we all think Lupita's should win. Dan's really high on it. You basically think it's a guarantee. I think there's too many questions to touch the DraftKings money, and I definitely wouldn't bet at minus 275. No way.
And who
with this many questions?
Yeah, I'm not going to bet her at minus 275 short notice. But if she's been training like I hope she has been, I mean, I don't know. I might do like an inside the distance bet. I don't know.
Who did Nick take?
And Nick is not here. Nick is training for a fight. We can't announce who he's fighting or when yet, but he is in full training camp. We film these pretty late at night, so Nick isn't able to join. I am wearing my.
He told me he agreed with everything I said, and Lupita.
Nick picked Jessica Penne. He picked her last time. If you watch that last breakdown video, he knows her pretty well. He spent some time with her. He's confident in the veteran savvy of Jessica, so he went with Jessica Penne in that fight. Next up at UFC Vegas 24, we have Zarah Fairn versus Josiane Nunes. And this is a tricky fight. First, the graphic is absurd. Jacob, thank you for taking the time to really put something
There's
nice
just
together.
no pictures of her. There's no pictures anywhere. It's crazy. You
Second,
start Googling her and you get more pictures of Amanda Nunes than her.
what's interesting here is DraftKings has far more confidence in Nunes than the odds makers do. And that's always interesting when we see that breakdown. And this is a tricky one. This is super close. My frank opinion, and I'll let you do a breakdown, Jacob, then I'll come back. Well, my frank opinion is they're both decent strikers. They both have horrible takedown defense. So I think this will just come down to the striking. But what are your thoughts? What did you see, and how do you see it going?
First of all, according to SureDog, they have Zarah as 5'10" and Nunes as 5'2". So that's a very interesting if that's a matchup, because I've never seen, especially in females, you don't see that a whole lot. You saw that with Megan Anderson against Nunes, but that's because Megan Anderson's 6 foot tall. Usually in divisions, you don't see that height difference. So that's gonna be very interesting. That's if they have that correct. As far as the fight goes, I see a lot of the same in them, the way they fight. It's a lot of power over technique. It's a lot of, when they think they have someone hurt, they're going to get in their face and really trying to finish the fight. So I think this really just comes down to, it's kind of a toss up to me. I think this is a lot closer than, 8,600, 7,600. I think it's just whoever can kind of clip the other person at first. And if that doesn't happen, I think it's just whoever gets tired first, honestly. And if maybe it's the bigger fighter and Zarah, I don't really know. So I have Zarah winning this fight. And it literally is just because of what looks to be the height difference. I mean, with the range to be able to keep, Nunes is a good fighter and a good, powerful fighter, but if Zarah's got the length on her that it's reading here, I think she can keep her at range and win the fight. So I think it's a toss up fight, but I have Zarah winning the fight.
Yeah, it's definitely interesting. It's a very close fight. The odds are probably correct, honestly. The DraftKings cost is what's way out of whack to me. I think Zarah wins it. I think she is a little more technical. Neither one of them are super technical, but I think Zarah is more technical. As you mentioned, she's much bigger, so she will be physically imposing. That is an issue if Nunes is a wrestler, right? There's just more leg to get in on. She's already low. She doesn't have to lower level that much. That's not a factor here. Neither one of them are looking to wrestle. And I just think that if Nunes gets in the pocket and throws those big, heavy punches, she could probably do something with it. But I think Zarah is more technical, can keep the distance. And although they're both losses, she does have 2 fights in the UFC. She has that experience under her belt. She's fought like really tough women already in the UFC. So I'm hoping that Nunes,
that's a great point. Yeah.
I'm hoping Nunes, like the moment gets to her a little bit. It's her first fight in the UFC. She's fighting somebody much larger with a similar style. And I'm hoping that gets to her, because I did put Zarah in my lineup at $7,600. Somebody that she is very active. They're both active. There will be a good amount of strikes here. There will be, a back and forth. And I think Zarah will win, and she may even get a stoppage out of it because neither one of them are afraid to bang. And we have seen, or I've seen footage of Josiane Nunes on her back. She does literally nothing. Like, if she does end up on her back, she just like accepts it and it is what it is. And, she'll just get ridden out there. So I just think Zarah's a little more technical of a striker. Neither one of them are going to be shooting takedowns, but if they do end up on the mat, I think Zarah will try to get back up where Nunes won't. And I just think there's too many things that are pushing me towards Zarah. I have her in my lineup because of the cost, but I would not be, it's not the most confident pick in the world.
Yeah, the talent level, I think, is a big portion. You mentioned that Zarah lost her last 2 fights versus, Megan Anderson and Felicia Spencer. where Nunes is, won a million in a row. But if you watch the tape on the fighter she's fighting, that's not Megan Anderson and Felicia Spencer. I can guarantee that. So it'll be very interesting to see how Nunes reacts to some real talent.
Yeah. So Dan, I mean, what are your thoughts here? Some of these fights are so evenly matched. They're very tricky to pick. This one's odd because they're evenly matched, but it's less about their strengths aligning and more about their weaknesses aligning with the wrestling and the grappling.
Yeah, I think this is, Jacob, you nailed it when you said on paper, Dos Santos has lost her last two. So you'd think like, oh, she's on a 2-fight skid and the other girl's on a 6-fight win streak or whatever it is. But to your point, her last 2 losses were in the UFC. Nunes won 5, 6 in a row. The interesting thing about Nunes, though, is literally 6 of her 7 wins are by knockout. So she's finished her last 5 fights. I mean, that's pretty impressive, especially at that weight class. You don't see that many finishes usually. You see a lot more decisions. So, and I looked at the competition she fought. I do have to do some more tape on this fight later on this week. So I'll give further updates in like our betting breakdown. But most of the fights she won were against other girls who had winning records, 4-1, 3-1. So it wasn't like she was fighting 1-4. So I don't know. This is a tough one to pick. I'm going to go with Dos Santos just off the finishing ability. But I wouldn't be surprised if this went into I'm going with Nunes just off the finishing ability. But I wouldn't be surprised if this went into later rounds if Dos Santos started to take over. The other interesting thing is her 2. So she's got 2 fights that went to a decision. One was a split and the other one was a loss. So looks like she's very strong when she gets the finish and might not fare so well in the later rounds. But all in all, very close fight. I'm going to take Nunes for the pick, but I'm not touching this for DraftKings either side.
Yeah, and you're saying Dos Santos, for anybody watching, Zarah Fairn also goes by Zarah Fame Dos Santos. So you may see that written and on, other pick stuff or on the UFC site a few different ways. So that's what that is. Nick is not here. Nick is training for a fight that we can't announce yet. He's in full camp. He picked Nunes as well. And he had the same logic as you, Dan, with the power that, they're pretty evenly matched on their feet. And the difference is probably the power, and Nunes can catch her. Next up at UFC Vegas 24, we have Tony Gravely versus Anthony Birchak. This is a fun one. The odds are all over the place. Not all over the place. The odds are very far apart, and I think it's pretty accurate. So I think it'll be a fun fight. I think the odds are pretty solid, though. But Dan, what are your thoughts here? How do you see this going?
Yeah, no, I think Tony Gravely trains at American Top Team, so he's getting better and better every fight. Very good wrestler, very good control. His other skills are developing. He's working with a lot of high-level coaches. But I think the big difference in this fight is just going to be the wrestling. It's going to be relentless. It's going to be nonstop. Birchak has a bunch of experience. He went 2-2 in the UFC back in 2014 through 16. He's 34 years old, so he's not old. He's looked good in his fight. He's looked good in some fights. He just hasn't looked special, I'll say. Apparently, he was a USA national champion wrestler. I don't know what level he was at, so he does have some wrestling, but I just think Gravely is going to be too much for him, and I think he's going to cruise to a unanimous decision victory. And get a bunch of takedowns, probably score a good amount of points. But I worry that Birchak might not be able to get back up. And if that's the case, it may not end up being a lot of points. So my pick's Gravely. I'm probably not going to touch this for DraftKings, but I think Gravely will win the fight.
Yeah, so what's interesting, the way I see it, I have Gravely in my lineup. He's my most expensive fighter because they do favor grapplers. Your point about you're worried Birchak won't get back up, your point there, I'm assuming, is not that Gravely will stop him. It's that he'll take him down for 5 points and then just kind of lay on top of him the rest of the round and score nothing else, which is
Birchak could scramble up though. He's a wrestler, so he could work for some scrambles. It could be multiple takedowns, but I don't know. I don't want to spend that sort of money to hope for that. You know what I mean? But you might be right. He may get a dozen takedowns.
Well, and my analysis here is that, it is a very clear path to victory. Tony Gravely's going to, take him down, beat him up. And Anthony Birchak has good jiu-jitsu. I think the striking's probably close to even between the two of them. You mentioned Tony Gravely's that American top team, training with Cattell and everybody else. So he's probably improving at a faster rate. So maybe he has a slight edge in the striking. The wrestling, I think, is going to go to Tony Gravely. You just mentioned the national champion thing with Birchak, which I hadn't seen that before. But let's say the wrestling goes to Tony Gravely. He's going to do that, and there's no bones about what he's going to do there. And his grappling is very good. Birchak is a good BJJ guy, but I don't think he's good enough. I don't think there's enough threat there to throw something up and submit Gravely. So I don't really see an issue for him. I think it's pretty clear and clean cut. But Jacob, what are your thoughts?
Clay Guida, Poliana Viana.
Oh my God.
Chaz Skelly.
Oh my Lord.
Thiago Moises. Kyler Phillips.
You're losing this week, Jacob. This is going to be your first loss.
Malarkey, Mackenzie Dern, Anthony Birchak. Welcome to Lock of the Week. Welcome to the club, my man. And I'll tell you why. Angelo, you almost got there. I thought you were going to get there, and you almost got there. Tony, let's go through his losses. Submission. 5 of his losses are submissions. We go through Anthony's wins. Half his wins are submissions. You go to the tape of Tony. Very good wrestler. Very good wrestler. You watch tape. A lot of times he's in weird scrambles and he's almost gotten caught in arm bars a number of times. I think he's a sloppy jiu-jitsu. I think he's sloppy in his jiu-jitsu. I think he's a great wrestler. And I just think there's an opportunity there for Anthony. I think he's good enough. Angelo, you didn't think he's good enough, but I think it's more of a combination of sloppy jiu-jitsu with Tony, because I've seen him almost get caught a bunch of times in tape, with the skills of Anthony. You combine those, that makes LOPW. Lock of the week. This is the absolute most bold.
This is a bold one, I will say.
I'm going on a streak where if I want it to end, I want it to end in flames. So we're going Anthony, the biggest underdog on the card. Talk to me.
Yeah, so I'll talk to you. First of all, half of your analysis is what every other bonehead on YouTube does, where you read their records. His losses are by submission.
I just said I watched the tape.
Wins are by submission. There's the pick.
I just said I watched the tape and I saw the sloppy jiu-jitsu. I said I watched the tape.
That's why I said the first half. The first half, you're every other bonehead doing these breakdown videos. Well, Tapology says. Your second half, I watched.
By the way, his sub losses was one to Brett Johns a couple fights ago, who's tough.
Very good.
And then before that, you go back to 2018. And then before that, you're in 2017, 2016. And by the way, I didn't even realize this. In 2016, he fought Merab Devishvili, the guy who's like a killer now. Up in New Jersey, right? And Ricky Bandejas, who's also a good fighter. So he was fighting tough guys when he was young, before he was training at American Top Team. And I can tell you right now, he's getting submission looks every single day. So
that's the only
I think you're going to see an improved Tony Gravely every time you see him right now.
Yeah, no, that's the only thing that I was like, I feel good about. I actually kind of felt, obviously I think every lock of the week I feel good about, but this I'm like, okay. And then I saw the interview where he's like, yeah, I'm at ATT now. And I was like, oh, damn it. I was like, so that does give me a little bit more worry, except, he's the biggest favorite on the card. He should win. I think he's definitely going to get the takedowns. It's just, I just see some sloppiness, and I think Anthony capitalizes on it. So Anthony's the lock of the week. He's in my lineup.
This is a bold one, Jacob. I'll give you credit.
It definitely is.
You guys kept giving me crap for picking the close favorites, so I went all in.
I think he can't handle the stress of all the lock of the week fame he's had, and he's like trying to get out of it now. He's trying to purposely blow it.
Too many people relying on him for his pick.
Right.
Now he
can't even go to picks. He can't even go to a restaurant anymore without people asking for his autograph. He wants his normal life back.
No, this is the perfect win-loss because if it misses, it's like, oh well, he was the biggest.
Everybody listening, do you hear him justifying his?
I was going to say, here we go. Here's the built-in excuse. I was going to say earlier, I was going to cut you off. I was like, he definitely has a built-in excuse somehow. I didn't know that you would just
when it hits
publicly admit it, but there it is, folks. The built-in excuse already.
No, I want to know. No, I want to know what you got when it hits. Now, what do we do? I picked the biggest underdog to hit 8 of my last 9 weeks. Then what happens? And I'm on top of the world, baby.
You ever play roulette?
We're at the tippy top, Dan.
You bet on green in roulette.
We're at the tippy top, and we're only halfway there, baby.
We'll see what happens. I'm going to have to go on and off mute to cough here. We'll see what happens. This is an interesting lock of the week for sure. I'm sad we won't be watching it together because I love watching you just melt down when these don't.
Why aren't you guys watching it together?
Because I'm married and my wife is like, we're going out to eat Saturday night. You have that on the books, right? And it's like, oh my God.
He's making up dinner, so I have to live. So he's forced me to live stream again.
Jacob, you don't go to dinner with them, Jacob? I thought you were like part of the.
No, I haven't been able to come.
It's a couples thing, and they don't allow dogs, Dan. Anyway, check out Jacob's live stream because I'll be out to eat. But Jacob has left the video. But check out his live stream. So check out Jacob's live stream, and we could all watch him melt together. Next up at UFC Vegas 24, we have Alexander Romanov versus Juan Espino in what should be an awesome fight and very exciting fight. I'm looking forward to this fight. Dan, Juan Espino is an American top team guy. You're an American top team guy. What are your thoughts? How do you see this going?
So this might be the fight I'm looking forward to most for different reasons than Angelo, but I think it's it is two bulls that are both used to going out and imposing their will, and it's going to be interesting to see who does it. So Romanov, undefeated, 13-0, big heavyweight wrestler. He's every bit of 265, and watching him fight, I think of Brock Lesnar, the way he shoots that blast double just recklessly, throws you against the cage. His blast double would probably total a small SUV. He's got a power single leg. He's got strong body locks. And the big thing is when he gets on top, he looks very heavy with brutal ground and pound. His last few fights, when he got on top of guys, the Donkey Kong punches. I would not want that guy on top of me. And then his last fight, he fought Marcos Rogério de Lima and literally choked him out with a forearm to the throat. I think I used to do that to my brother when we used to wrestle outside, but he did it to a professional fighter at heavyweight and put him unconscious. So
and to Angelo.
And it's the third time he's done it. So we're talking serious power here with this guy, serious strength, serious power. But I will say his striking does not look good. He hasn't really had to use it in most of his fights because he just steamrolls people to the ground. He's got a powerful left kick, but he looks a little bit off balance when he throws it. But from the striking department, that's really all I saw. He was getting beat up by De Lima while it was on the feet, and then eventually he said enough of that and just kind of bull charged him and got him to the ground. Excuse me. So anyways, insanely strong guy. The fight before that against Rocky Martinez, I actually had him in DraftKings that week. I scored a gazillion points. He suplexed him over his head. The guy's like literally 260 pounds, like condensed into a ball, probably the hardest human form you could ever have to suplex. And when he got on top of him, he just went from different power sub to different power sub, Kimura, Americana, headlock at one point, mount, crazy ground and pound, the Donkey Kong punches Jacob was talking about, just a smothering beat down, 10-8 round for sure in the first, and then finished him in the second with a head and arm choke. So he's looked like a one-way train, just like taking people out so far. This fight, though, he's fighting Juan Espino, who's 10-1, 6'3", 255, so another big boy. And you can tell by their builds, he's definitely a more muscular guy. He is 40 years old, and he's had a little bit of a layoff, or previously had a layoff. But the guy hasn't lost since 2011. So stylistic-wise, he's also a good grappler, good wrestling. used to getting his way and doing that top game big boy jiu-jitsu where power subs, but I would say overall he is definitely more technical, both in his takedowns and striking. Overall, I think he's just a more technical fighter. He dominated Jeff Hughes' last fight, got multiple takedowns, took the back, won with a scarf hold choke. So he's got a similar style, powerful, strong stuff that gets finishes. Same thing 2 fights ago against Justin Frazier, another big heavyweight, took him down right out of the gates, side control, straight arm lock finish. So these guys are both used to getting on top, beating guys up, and finishing. So I just think the matchup is going to be very interesting to see both of these styles collide, because one of them is going to get their way and one isn't. I will say I think Espino has an advantage if he fights a smart game plan, right? So we know what Romanov's going to do. He's going to bull forward, push against the cage, try to get that takedown. If he gets on top of you, it's not a good thing, no matter how good you are in jiu-jitsu or any of that. But I think if Espino can call it weather the storm the first round or evade takedowns, fight out in the open as much as possible. If he does get taken down, try to scramble back up as soon as he can, make Romanov work. Do not let him settle on top. If he can do that for the first round and not give Romanov his way, it'll be interesting to see, because we've seen Romanov be the hammer, but we really haven't seen him be the nail in any fights. And I think Espino is big enough and good enough to do that and make it a fight. So if that's the case, I think Espino's got more skills to win. And I think in later rounds, if he can create space, he could piece him up on the feet. And if he gets on top himself in the later rounds and Romanov is too tired to scramble, I think he could also, win the fight that way. So I think it's going to be really close. It's a tough one to call. As always, I'm going with the ATT train guy. I think that, they're going to be prepared. They've got game plans in place. He trains with Steve Mako, who's a heavyweight wrestler, went to the Olympics. So they've got all the tools they need to prepare for this sort of matchup. So I'm picking him, but I think it's going to be a great fight, and it's going to be really interesting to see who kind of dominates out of the gates, because both these guys have that sort of style.
Yeah, that was a good breakdown. I usually bust your balls about how long you take, but everything there was rock solid. I think it is tricky because on paper, Juan. So first of all, both of them are national caliber wrestlers in the country that they're from. So right out of the gate, they're both the best in their countries. Then, as you mentioned, the striking is the next piece. I think they're pretty evenly matched with the striking. Neither one of them are phenomenal. Juan Espino is probably more technical, uses it in its truest form to actually strike, where Romanov uses it just to get to his wrestling. And then in the jiu-jitsu, I think Juan Espino is a much better actual jiu-jitsu guy. He's a black belt in jiu-jitsu. But to your point, I don't know if that matters. I just don't know if that matters. So this is super, super tricky. Juan Espino is traditionally relentless with his takedowns, just relentless. Keep trying, keep working forward. You compared Alexander Romanov to Brock Lesnar, which is a solid comparison. But if you look at who beat Brock Lesnar the first time was Cain Velasquez, because he was like, I'm not going to wait for you to shoot. I'm going to shoot. So I would actually say the opposite, where you said Juan, his path to victory is weather the storm, stay away, avoid getting taken down, and then you can start to impose your plan. I would almost say go right at it. Shoot the takedowns first, have him back up, have him worry about the takedowns, and you march forward, because why are you waiting for a charging bull if you can just go right at it first?
Yep. No, that is a very, very good point. And right. I think it's got to be one or the other, right? It can't be a feeling out process. It's got to be, yeah, you're right. Because if he gets on top early, I mean, both these guys are monsters on top. So, and actually there was something I had in here. I didn't mention it before, but I saw it in one of his fights. Romanov did get taken down by Sultan Murtaziliev a few fights back, and the guy's a 235-pound heavyweight, so not a big heavyweight. Now, it was off of a kick, but he did get him down. He was on top. It was the first round, so Romanov scrambled up. But I just see like if Espino can capitalize on something like that early, I don't think Romanov gets up as easily. So yeah, if there's an opportunity to get on top early, whether it be scramble or just go out there and get the first takedown, race for the first takedown, that's a good point, because that's another potential path to victory.
Well, and I promise, Jacob, we'll go to you. As a wrestler, I've wrestled most of my life. It is much easier to finish a takedown than defend a takedown. It just is. So you don't want to be in a position defending a takedown against somebody that good when you could get your own. And honestly, somebody like Georges St-Pierre showed that. Georges St-Pierre was not a wrestler. He learned how to wrestle in his MMA career, and he smoked all these genuinely good wrestlers because he didn't wait. He just shot. And it's much easier to finish a takedown than to defend one. So that would be my approach. I'm obviously not in his camp, not in his ear. So pick wise, I hate to make a pick because nothing would surprise me here. I will go with Espino only because I think he's just the better fighter. Alexander Romanov is more physically imposing and is probably better at that one thing, which is the factor here. But I just think Juan Espino is the better fighter. I just hope his age isn't going to be an issue. I hope he's not going to get to 40s old. I'm 37. I'm old. So I just hope that age doesn't catch up to him. He doesn't get gassed. And, he has no problem going out there, just charging forward and making it happen. So, Jacob, if anybody's still watching after 49 minutes, what are your thoughts here?
First of all, the double hammer fist, I think he was in full mount when he was doing that double hammer fist. And was one of the most terrifying things I've ever seen in my life. That big man just on top, literally just both fists going at you. I will say that, Alexander, you mentioned you think their stand-ups are even. Alexander has no stand-up at all. He just runs forward at you with your head down, and that's what he does.
Heavyweight Ben Askren.
Right. Yeah. That's exactly what it is. And actually against Lima, his last fight, he was taking a lot of damage while he was coming in. He just kind of comes forward, and Lima was hitting him with shots. And I think Juan's a decent enough striker to where, he has heavy enough hands to where he actually could, land some shots in there. But my big prediction for this fight is it is the absolute most boring fight on the card. I think it's one of those situations where they're both just phenomenal grapplers. And you guys kind of alluded to it, like who's going to wait for the shot, who's going to initiate the shot. I think it just could be one of those matchups where they just kind of stand and stare at each other because they're both waiting for the shot, from the other person. So that's my big prediction. With that said, I think Juan can win it with his, his striking on the shots. You can catch him moving in, and he's crafty enough on the ground and good enough himself to win. So I think there's actually very good value at $7,400 for Juan. He was originally in my lineup but then Alexander is just so good, and you see him on top in so many positions that, there's a decent enough chance that even at $7,400, he's just on his back for 30 rounds. So, but I see this both just standing almost the entire time in a very boring fight, but I have one.
I would be so shocked at that. I mean, you could be right, but I just don't think Romanov has a gear that's not go forward and get takedown. Like, I just can't imagine him hanging out in space.
I hope I'm wrong, but that's just the way I see it.
Yeah, I don't know. We'll see. It's definitely an interesting matchup.
Yeah, I'm very curious about this one. So, we'll see what happens, and I'm looking forward to it. Next up at UFC Vegas 24, we have Tracy Cortez versus Justine Kish in what the odds makers are saying is one-sided beating. Jacob, is it a one-sided beating? What are your thoughts? How do you see this going?
I think it is. And I think first of all, I just want to say that I'm a proud, very, very proud new follower of Tracy Cortez on Instagram. She does a great job on her page, puts up some great information, some valuable information. So I'm a proud new follower on her Instagram. If you're watching this, Tracy, I know you're probably watching this at some point. I live stream now, so I'm sure you've seen my streams, but I just want to say, what's up? I don't know your marital status, but I'm here if you need me. And with that said, she's a fantastic fighter, very, very good fighter. And this is what sold me on Tracy Cortez as a fighter. There was a shot that she took against Agapova that was unreal. So Agapova's a southpaw, and she's orthodox, and she stepped in to throw a right and caught a left at the same time. So she just walked straight into this left and absolutely did not even phase her. Didn't flinch, didn't stun, didn't do anything. It was unbelievable. She's got good takedowns. She's very patient as a fighter. And then you look at Justine Kish. With she's 3-3 in the UFC. She looks awkward as a fighter. She's almost got like that Stephen Thompson stance, but she's not as bouncy as Stephen Thompson. It's a weird like 3/4 stance. She's got weird footwork. Nothing looks very fluid. And her head movement, man, when she's coming forward, it's not very technical. And her head movement is a lot of just straight back. There's not a lot at side to side. I think that Tracy is actually going to get her in a position where she's against the cage and now there's nowhere for your head to go. And I actually put some interesting prop bets on Tracy to get, I think her first, her second finish ever. So she's got 8 wins, most are decisions. I think that she can get a TKO win in this. So I put her in my lineup. And it's more about Justine's. I just don't like the way that she fights. Obviously, Tracy's very good. She's live for a couple takedowns maybe, but I think she's just overall a much better fighter. And I think she finds a way to get a finish in this fight. And at $9,000, that's expensive, but I actually have real money. Watch our betting fights on our betting video on Saturday, but I got some good prop bets on her, and I think she finds a way to finish the fight.
Yeah, I think, I like that analysis. I think Cortez wins this fight as well. But what's funny is I think Justine Kish is actually the better, more well-rounded fighter. But I think at the end of the day, it's going to come down to wrestling. And Tracy Cortez can dictate where this fight goes. She can take it down whenever she wants to. She can do whatever she needs to when she gets it to the ground. I think Justine's probably, you mentioned her striking's weird because of her stance and stuff, but I actually think she's the better striker. But I don't think it matters. I think Tracy will just take her down if she needs to.
I disagree.
If she's losing,
I disagree.
If she's losing the striking exchanges, she'll just take her down, and then that's the end of it. So I do think she wins. You now have me questioning. I don't have her in my lineup, but $9,000 is not a bad price for what should be a dominant win, because there'll be takedown points. I think she'll be very busy, and there might be a stoppage. I don't know, but it should be a dominant win. I see her getting it done.
She's just, she feels due for, I mean, she's just too good to not get finishes. I just think she's due for a finish. And I think this is a great matchup for her to get a finish. I just feel like she's just so good that only one finish seems crazy to me.
The problem is once you went on and on about her Instagram, your analysis from that point on was a dating video and not an actual fight analysis. So I don't know what I can trust or what is just throwing it out there to see what kind of response you get. So we're done with you. Dan, as a normal human being, why don't you break down this fight and let us know how you see it going?
Well, I also went to her Instagram. I think Tracy Cortez is going to win this fight. I do think that Kish, I mean, it's funny because she's got some wins against good opponents. She beat Nina Ansaroff Nunes, a couple other decent wins out there. But then, she's lost 3 of her last 4. I don't want to say it's going to be a close fight. I think Justine Kish's takedown defense might be a little bit better than we're expecting. But at the end of the day, I think Cortez is going to get her way here, going to win via wrestling. I don't know if she's going to get a finish, but I think she's going to win the fight. I think she's going to dominate. I'm not touching it for 9,000 in DraftKings, and I'm not betting on the fight either. So, my pick is Cortez via dominant decision, but not touching it for DraftKings.
Jacob, what are you rubbing?
I wouldn't rub anything.
I'm going to edit that out, but I heard I
was just sitting here like this.
Jacob,
why is all of a sudden me?
Because I heard it.
If you like my analysis that much, I
heard it come out of my speakers too. So
I bet. All right. I edited it out, so nobody needs to know. Either way, it's going to be a fun fight. Nick picked her too. So all 4 of us going Tracy Cortez by wrestling. But we'll see what happens. It should be an interesting one. I'm actually looking forward to her winning because, she'll be a nice injection of some star power into that division.
Good luck, Tracy.
You just yelled into the microphone like she can hear you. Literally just yelled into the microphone.
Next up at UFC Vegas 24, we have Bartosz Fabinski versus Gerald Meerchaert. This is an interesting fight. This is a ton of fun. I'm really looking forward to this one. And this card to go on a little rant here. A lot of these cards recently are not ripe with star power, although Meerchaert's, kind of a name at this point. They're not ripe with star power, but the matchups are all phenomenal. And this is another one. This is a rock solid matchup, super close fight. I'm going to go right to you, Dan. What are your thoughts? How do you see this going?
Yeah, I agree. I think it's a very close fight. I mean, we look at both guys on paper. So Fabinski lost 2 of his last 3, but he won 7 straight before that. He's 3-2 in the UFC. It was weird. He was 3-1 in the UFC, and then I think he got cut or whatever, had an issue, and then he won 1 and came back. But both of his losses to Andrei Munoz and Michael Brazeres were submissions in the first round. So watching tape on him, he's very aggressive out of the gates, just instantly going for clinch takedowns. He did that against Munoz. Munoz defended well, but once Fabinski got on top, actually Fabinski didn't even get a takedown. He got guillotined, almost submitted, and then when he finally broke free, he got submitted via armbar. He definitely had the same game plan against Aaron Stewart, smothered him against the cage, going for takedowns. It does not look like he is that strong of a striker. So I think he's got one path to victory here, and I think everybody knows what it is, including Meerchaert. So Meerchaert being a almost 50 fight veteran, I would think he's well prepared for this. But on paper, he has lost 5 of his last 7. He got starched by Khamzat his last fight, and Ian Heinisch, both in the first round. But then he's got one of his other losses is a split decision to Holland. So he's fighting some top guys, making it close. And then he submitted Deron Wynn, he submitted Trevin Giles. So he's one of those guys that's very good, but not great, I would say. If he shows up, he can make it interesting with anybody. But if he doesn't show up, he could go out and get starched in 20 seconds. Probably not in this fight, but I think this fight is very close, but I'm going to go with Meerchaert just on being more experienced, and stylistically, I think this is about as good of a matchup as he can get. He's fine on the ground. He's comfortable there. I think he can beat Fabinski on the feet if he needs to, although, I wouldn't say Meerchaert is the best striker, but I think he's better than Fabinski. So I just think this is stylistically the best type of matchup that Meerchaert could get. He's good on the ground. I think he'll win the ground exchanges. I don't see this fight really being a lot of points in DraftKings. I don't think. I see a lot of defense on the cage. I could be wrong, but I'm not touching this for DraftKings unless I really not. I mean, $7,900, $8,300. Yeah, no, I'm not touching this one. So I think it'll be a close fight, but I think Meerchaert's experience and just overall skills being slightly better and more well-rounded, I think he'll win the fight.
Yeah, we couldn't be farther apart on this. So
Really?
First off, Fabinski looks exactly like our old Bellator buddy and your coach, or one of your coaches on The Ultimate Fighter, Zach Light. They look identical.
Oh, yeah, that's true.
And I'm sure they fight the same way too. And I'm going with Fabinski. You're right. He's a one-dimensional wrestler, zero bones about it. He talks about it. And I think that's a problem. I think it's a genuine problem. And Meerchaert's coming off of 2 bad knockout losses. He doesn't have to worry about the knockout in this fight, but he does need to keep it standing because you're right. He is a good grappler. He's like a grappler by nature. That's his background, but he doesn't seem to be grappling very much, honestly. And I think if he gets taken down, which he will eventually in this fight, I don't know how busy he's going to be. I don't know what he's going to be able to do down there. I think Fabinski wins. I think these odds are solid, meaning it is a close fight, but I think Fabinski wins. I do have in my DraftKings because $8,300 is a good price for somebody that will get takedown points, will get riding time. I don't know if he'll win by stoppage, but I imagine his top control is insane and he's very busy when he's on top. So I think if he gets it to the mat, I don't think Meerchaert's getting back up, at least not in that round. But I think he'll eat a lot of strikes and will get a lot of control time. So $8,300, I do like that. So you and I are pretty far apart on this one. So this will be interesting. But Jacob, How do you see it going? What are you doing? Why are you smirking?
I want you to replay what you just said in the recap video on Sunday, because you couldn't be further from reality on Fabinski. His striking, first of all, is non-existent, and he's that's all he does is go for takedowns. But if you watch Gerald, he's got great takedown defense, and his striking is 100 times better than Fabinski's going to be. So if you combine the two, the takedown defense, even if he gets taken down, he'll just find a way to submit Fabinski. But I think he finds a way to just keep it on his feet. I think he finds a way to make Fabinski strike. And when that starts happening, Fabinski's going to start panicking and just diving at legs. And it's going to be one of those TKOs where he's hanging on a leg type of thing. So I think Gerald takes this at $7,900. You have to have underdogs in your lineups. And a lot of times, underdogs are right around that 50-50 mark as a toss up. I think this is the best, underdog you can get value at $7,900 on the card. I think he wins it. I think this was a tailor-made matchup for him. I think, like you said, he's struggling with people that were very good strikers. I think this was a tailor-made matchup for him, because I think the UFC knows that they have good talent here with Gerald. So he's in my lineup, and I pick him to win.
Appreciate you doing that for me, Jacob, because I was gonna jump in there, and then you were all over it. Appreciate that.
I'm just not. I mean, we'll see how it goes. Nick picked Meerchaert as well, so I'm the lone survivor on the Fabinski train. But I think he's just so relentless with his wrestling. There's not going to be a chance for Meerchaert to get off any strikes. Well, and when he gets taken down, the top control is relentless. And your whole thing is he's going to win by strikes, by hammer fist on the side of the head against the cage. Get the hell out of here.
No, I'm saying no. Hey, listen to what I said. I said he's going to hurt him, and he's going to be hurt. And that's when he makes those dumb dive for legs because he's hurt. And then that's when he TKOs him. But this is also, too, if it goes to the ground, 3 of Fabinski's 4 losses are submissions. Meerchaert's got like 23 submissions in his career. So,
yeah, I just don't see it. And submissions off your back against a wrestler that good are very different than submissions off.
I wouldn't bank on that, but yeah, I got to go back and watch the Duran Win fight. I know he gassed out later in that fight, and I think he got takedowns easy. But Duran Win, I believe, is on a different level of wrestling than Fabinski. But I don't know. I just think Meerchaert, like literally game plan wise, like you could repeat the same sparring session every day to get the look that you're going to get from Fabinski every time.
And you're right. The very, very, very one-dimensional game plan is good and bad. It's bad because, like you said, it's easy to prepare for. At least you know what's going to happen. But also to prepare for that, he may be afraid to throw any kicks, afraid to throw any punches, afraid to commit to anything because a shot's coming. And he's just waiting for a shot.
No, I don't think, but that's what I think. Gerald is a good enough wrestler. I think he trusts his wrestling enough to where he's not scared. He doesn't. If he gets taken down, I think he's not worried about getting taken down. So I think he's comfortable with that. I agree that happens a lot with people, but I think Gerald trusts his own wrestling enough to where if he takes a shot, he feels like he can defend the shot, and if he happens to get taken down, I feel like he can get back to his feet.
Yeah, Fabinski has 0 submissions too. By the way, I'm just looking it up.
Yeah, that doesn't happen. His top control is impressive. Too bad there's no stat to show how many people get out from underneath.
Jesus, Meerchaert has 23 subs.
Yeah,
I think you said
100%.
That, wow.
I think let me backpedal.
Are you going to? Oh, here we go. Is he going to changing his pick again?
I'm not changing my pick.
Remember the last time we talked, you had a pick?
Oh, yeah.
And, that was great. And then he won.
Fabinski,
I don't think it ever made the video. I don't think the people level saw it.
Well, we don't control the recap video. It's all Angelo highlights, I'm sure.
In my lineup, I'm not wavering from that. But I will say Meerchaert is probably one of the livest dogs in this entire card. And it's perfect for a block of the week. You really messed up here. But I do think Fabinski wins. I think his wrestling and his top control are just too much. But we'll see what happens. I'm the lone survivor here, so don't necessarily put all your eggs in my basket. But I'm gonna love this breakdown in the recap. Yeah, I'm gonna love it.
You put the eggs in his basket, and he's gonna eat those things.
A fat joke. That's very appropriate. Next up at UFC Vegas 24, we have late replacement Andrei Arlovski versus Chase Sherman. And this fight kind of breaks my heart. Chase Sherman is supposed to fight Parker Porter. Parker Porter is a personal friend of ours, personal friend of mine, personal friend of Nick's, knows Dan pretty well. We're all from Connecticut. So I would have rather seen Parker in here, but this is an interesting fight because Chase Sherman gets the opportunity of a lifetime. You fight a name like Andrei Arlovski, and he gets it on short notice. So I think full training camp, this is a no-brainer. Short notice, it injects some questions in here, and it's pretty interesting. Quickly, before I go to you, Dan, I was texting with Parker this morning. He's doing much better, so he should be back at it pretty soon. And I bluntly said, do you think Chase Sherman can beat Andrei Arlovski? And he said no. So his pick is Andrei Arlovski. Dan, you're an American Top Team guy. Andrei Arlovski is now an American Top Team guy. So I can almost assume your pick, but why don't you break it down for us and let us know what you think?
I'm always going ATT, but I will always give a breakdown. No, so I watched, I mean, we've seen a million Arlovski fights, and, he's done well recently. His last fight was a tough one against Tom Aspinall, but I mean, Tom Aspinall is like a legitimate potential future contender. The guy's got great boxing, good jiu-jitsu. That guy's just going to be a problem for the division, I think, if he keeps on the trajectory he's at. But let's be honest, Chase Sherman is not Tom Aspinall. Prior to that, Arlovski beat a bunch of good guys: Tanner Boser, Felipe Lin, sorry. So Arlovski has looked good as of late if you remove that last loss. He's done a great job of dictating the pace against guys, and he's so experienced that if you let him dictate the pace and control the tempo of the fight and let him get his strikes in, he's good enough, experienced enough, and smart enough to figure out ways to win fights against guys who are younger, more athletic, etc. So he's got that going for him. Now, with that being said, in this fight, Chase Sherman is the sort of guy who I don't think is going to be someone who lets someone dictate the pace. Now, I think that can work in Arlovski's favor because from what I saw on tape from Sherman, well, first of all, he trains at Jackson Wink, so or he did, I believe, in his last fight. So assuming he's still there, you got to imagine he's improving. But from what I saw on tape, he's got holes in his defense, just point blank. He's got like, let's go through his fights, right? So he's 2-5 in the UFC, and then he got cut. Then he won 3 straight and got a shot again and won. And he steamrolled all the guys, but they were all kind of, they were not upper level competition, right? So he looked good in all the fights, early finishes, etc. But in his striking, he stands pretty straight up and stationary, not a lot of footwork. He does have a counter, a good counter and check left hook. And he can do it kind of moving backwards and forward. So he's always looking for that left hook to catch you coming in or when he's moving forward. But he drops his hands. He drops his jab before and after he throws it. It's like, the first rule of boxing, right? You learn it's right here and back. He drops it before the jab, and then when he resets, he drops it as well. So I think he leaves himself open for a big right hand. Jacob, let me see a jab, Jacob. Good job.
Oh, back.
There you go. Right. Wow, that was bad. So I just think he's, excuse me. I think he's obviously younger. He hits hard, and he's willing to take one to give one. But I think Arlovski's smart enough, skilled enough, and good, just good enough of a striker to find that opening when Sherman leaves himself open, and there will be spots. The last fight that Sherman won, he literally steamrolled the guy where he's like, all right, you can hit me twice if I can hit you once, because I know I'm faster and hit harder. With Arlovski, you can't do that. Arlovski could catch him, and I think he'll capitalize in the holes in the defense of Sherman. Now, Arlovski taking it on short notice, that's obviously a factor. So, you got to take that into account. But, my pick is Arlovski. He's the favorite, too, from the betting card. So I think that they're putting a lot of stock in him as just kind of the overall better striker and more experienced guy, especially on short notice for him to still be the favorite. So Arlovski's my pick. I don't. Am I going to put him in DraftKings? 8,500 now. I'm probably not going to touch him in DraftKings, but he's definitely my pick for the fight.
What's really interesting about this is Chase Sherman was preparing for Parker Porter. Andrei Arlovski and Parker Porter actually have pretty similar styles, right? They both they strike similarly, where they're pretty busy on their feet, in, out, lots of movement. They're mixing in kicks and punches. So Chase Sherman was preparing for that style. So it's not a drastic style shift here. It's not like Chase Sherman lost the striker first and now he's fighting a wrestler. And it's like, oh my God, what have I been doing for 5 weeks? So
do they really have similar styles? I don't know. I got to go watch some tapes of Parker.
They do.
But
yeah, they do.
Really? Okay.
And so it's not like he has to throw out, 5 weeks of training camp and now prepare for a wrestler or anything like that.
Right.
Andrei Arlovski does have that veteran savvy, and Chase Sherman has done a bunch of bare knuckle boxing. And what that tells me is he has no problem getting into the fire and mixing it up. And he doesn't care what happens to his face, as dumb as that sounds. And I think that actually could be a problem against Andrei Arlovski, meaning a problem for Chase, because I wouldn't want to be in the pocket exchanging blow for blow with Andrei Arlovski. He had this weird trajectory, and Glover Teixeira had a similar one where as he got older, his chin started to go. And then it's like, oh, the chin's going to be a problem. And then all of a sudden there was a resurgence where the chin was like stronger than ever. And Andrei Arlovski has that, where the last few years, his chin has been phenomenal, better than it was just a few years prior. And it defies logic. And I think if Chase Sherman goes in there with that bare knuckle mentality, I think it's a problem, and Andrei Arlovski will put him out. So
Arlovski took big shots early on from Aspinall, and he ate it, and he landed some big shots at the end too. And Aspinall is a very good boxer. Like,
yeah,
Chase Sherman, I think, is going to get hit a lot more than Aspinall did.
Yeah, I think Andrei Arlovski wins this fight. I wouldn't be surprised if he didn't. It's 5 days notice. You got to assume somebody like him is in great shape and Noah's doing some level of training, especially at that camp. And does he live near the gym? Like, does he live in Florida?
Yeah, I think he's here full time. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So he's getting it in. But 5 days is still 5 days. But Jacob, what are your thoughts here? How do you see it going? Is anybody going to pick Chase out of the crew?
Yeah, I'm also getting it in. Andrei Arlovski, you mentioned the down slope, and then he's back on the up slope. At that age, sometimes, every time, eventually that starts to keel back over and you start going back down. I think you saw that a little bit in the last fight. I think he lost a little bit of a step. He struggled with the speed of the punches. And I think Chase Sherman is quick enough, to get in there. And I think there's just at some point you can't just keep winning, right? At some point you lose a step. I mean, with that age. And I think that there's just, this fight is you're going to see that he lost a step. And Chase Sherman also with the bare knuckle, he was 1-1-1 in the bare knuckle fights, but he also he was a split draw, and then he fought for the heavyweight title and won. So he was actually the heavyweight champion of the bare knuckles foundation, whatever they're called. So
when they announce them, they say the heavyweight champion with a record of 1-1-1.
Well, at that point he was 1-1. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Oh no, he was 1-0-1. That's what he was. Because then he lost. Right. Yeah, so he's 1-0-1. Yeah. So
they put an emphatic undefeated in front of that.
Oh yeah, undefeated.
Like right. Jacob's lock of the weeks.
Right.
Yeah. No. But then also you look at his record too. He has 15 wins. I think 14 of them are KO or TKO. So he definitely knows how to finish a fight. I think Andrei just has lost a step, and I think you'll see that. So I have Chase Sherman, not in my lineup, but I think he wins this fight.
That's not a terrible. I mean, you're 100% correct when you say eventually it goes right back down, and it could be the beginning of the end for Andrei again, because he had the beginning of the end like 5 years ago, and then it didn't end up happening. So anything's possible. I just think I would not bet this fight. I would not put this fight in my DraftKings lineup because I completely agree with you that it's not a guarantee. But it's Andrei.
I think this was a fight I was gonna put and we'll talk about betting fights on the betting card, but I think this was one of the ones I was gonna put inside the distance because I don't see this one going on the distance of these guys the way they throw.
Yeah, I agree. If Andrei Arlovski wins a decision, it is the veteran savvy. He closes the distance. He holds Chase Sherman against the cage and just stomps his feet and Usmans him. That's how he'll win a decision. He's smart. He took it on 5 days notice. That's not outrageous. That's what Andrei Arlovski comes out and does. Just pushes him against the cage, beats him up there, wins round after round like that, minute after minute.
But he could also win a decision controlling the distance too. I didn't see much
around.
Yeah, just kind of knowing his distance, staying out of range, picking shots, avoiding the big ones. Like I didn't see much out of Sherman that was footwork wise that, he basically comes forward and is like, all right, hit me. I'm going to hit you back too.
Well, and that's what I was saying with the bare knuckle thing. I don't know if that's the approach you want to be taking against somebody with the power and the savvy of Andrei Arlovski, but it should be an interesting fight. I'm definitely looking forward to it. It's probably better for the division if Chase Sherman wins to sort of get some fresh face in there, but either way, it'll be a fun one. And I'm looking forward to it. Next up at UFC Vegas 24, we have Abdul Razak Al-Hassan versus Jacob Malkoun. This is another very lopsided fight as far as the odds are concerned. DraftKings feels the same way. I think Malkoun is the cheapest, most inexpensive person on the card. I could be wrong, but he's definitely at the bottom of that list. You don't often see people at the 6,000 range. So this is an interesting one. Jacob, I'll let you go first here. What are your thoughts here? How do you see this one going?
Oh boy, this was originally my lock of the week.
Oh my!
There's a Jacob on the card. My name's
you're like your real lock of the week and your almost lock of the week are not going to go well.
Wait, are you going to make this your official backup lock of the week?
No, I have a different backup lock of the week that you guys are going to like. But no, this was originally my lock of the week. Listen, Abdul is fantastic.
And then you watched both them fight.
I didn't realize it was interrupt time, Dan.
I'm sorry. Go ahead with your backup lock of the week.
Anyway, Abdul, fantastic fighter. He's got 10 wins. I think they're all TKO, KO. Here's where it worries me a little bit. I see in him a little bit of Cody Garbrandt. And by that, I mean, when he thinks someone's hurt, it just drop the hands and throw wild hooks. And I think Jacob is a good enough counter puncher and patient enough to where, number one, I think he can catch Abdul where he thinks Jacob's hurt more than he is. And Jacob catch him with a counter. I think he's a very good counter puncher. But there's also, I'm worried about Abdul's stamina because he is very, very ferocious fighter. He's coming forward. He's throwing strikes. He can even working to get takedowns even. He's a good grappler. But I saw in the third round of one of his fights where he got, he pushed for takedowns. He got a couple of takedowns to start the round. And then the last 2 minutes, he's on his back where he's just not really doing anything. So cardio worries me a little bit. I think Jacob, if he can be patient enough and counter those big shots from Abdul early, I see a little, like I said, I see Garbrandt and Abdul to where he gets a little over aggressive, drops his hands and comes forward. I think Jacob can either catch him or withstand enough in and out to get to the third round. And then anything's up for grabs at that point. So I have Jacob winning, late basically because Abdul is just so tired. So that was my almost lock of the week, but I think Jacob wins this fight. He's not in my lineup because I have my lock of the week in there as my big, underdog, but I think he's even good value at $6,900.
And you base all of that off of the 18 seconds of UFC fight time he had before he was put out?
What?
Jacob Malkoun was knocked out in 18 seconds.
He's like, "What? Don't be ridiculous." He's like, "Don't be ridiculous." I didn't watch any fights. I'm like,
was that his only fight? I mean,
I read this.
Basically, he has 5 fights. One of them was 18 seconds long. So yeah. So here, the way I see it, man, I think Abdul Razak Al-Hassan is just a much better striker with more power, more technical, and Jacob Malkoun doesn't have the power to knock out Abdul and doesn't have the wrestling to take him down if he needs to. So I just don't see a path to victory at all for Jacob Malkoun. But myself, the odds makers, and the rest of the world could be wrong. Dan, what are your thoughts?
No, I agree. When I saw the matchup at first, I was like, all right, Al-Hassan, that guy hits hard. Who's he fighting? 4-1. I'm like, there's got to be a catch. Maybe this guy was like a glory kickboxer, or I was like, it just seemed like a little bit of a mismatch when you look at it on paper. And then I, realized he trains out of the same camp as Robert Whittaker. So I was like, oh, maybe this guy looks really good. He's a killer. So, anyways, I'll start with Al-Hassan just because, there's plenty of tape on him. And mean, the guy just throws bombs. I mean, you know, he did lose his last two, but you know,
and got knocked out cold. His last,
right.
I'm just saying that was only in November too. And he was knocked out like for 10 minutes on the mat. So, I mean, that was a bad knockout.
Yeah, he got knocked out pretty good. But you know, the fight before that, he almost finished, what's his name? Munir Lazez. Oh my God, that first round, I was like, Lazez is a zombie. I was like, I don't know. I mean, the guy was like smiling too as he was getting hit with absolute bombs. And he punched himself out after the first round. He was gassed and Lazez took over. And I think it was two things, you know, he gassed himself out. That was one. And two, Lazez ended up being kind of way better and more versatile than people thought in that fight. So it's always easy to look like a superstar when your opponent's gassed, but you know, I think he surprised a lot of people in that fight. Anyways, Al Hassan is a power puncher. He's a good striker. I think he's just on the feet, stand-up wise, significantly better than Malkoun. From what I saw on the tape I watched for Malkoun, you know, he looks like a 4-1 fighter. You know, he's just looks like he's good. He's improving. He's tough. He's probably going to be really good eventually, but he's got 5 fights. The other guy's got 13, and he's fought in the UFC against killers. I mean, Al Hassan has beaten Nico Price. He beat Sabah Homasi, who's one of my good friends and very, very good. He's actually fighting this week in Bellator and been on a tear. So Al Hassan has some legit wins against top-level competition. And Malkoun, I looked at the guys he fought. They're kind of like regional guys in Australia, and you know, stylistically, he looks like a good striker, but his defense just doesn't look there. He keeps his hands low. He brings them right back to his chest. You know, as far as grappling goes, he did shoot some takedowns in the fight, but nothing looked like crazy impressive wrestling. And he did get taken down. This is his fight 2 fights ago against Tamesi in Australia. So, again, regional fight, it was competitive. It wasn't like he's walking through guys. So I just think Al Hassan is going to come out and put a big bomb on him and put him away probably early. I will say, though, if it does go to later rounds, you never know because Al Hassan could get tired. But I've got to imagine after that Lazez fight, he's like, all right, I can't let that happen again. I'm not going to go for broke in the first round. I'm not going to, blow my load first round and not be able to recover. So I would imagine we'll see a more calculated but still very powerful Al Hassan, and I think he's going to win this fight.
Yeah, it'll be interesting just to see what happens, but yeah, I think it's pretty one-sided fight. And as you mentioned, I just don't see how Malkoun wins it. Anybody has a puncher's chance in a fight, so that's always possible, but he doesn't have the wrestling to mix it up if he needs to, and he's not the more technical striker, so he's not going to win a straight-up striking battle unless he just bites down and wings punches. So this is pretty, to me, this is a pretty straightforward fight. Nick, who's not here because he's in training camp, he has a fight coming up. We can't announce it just yet. He also picked Al Hassan. So you're on an island, Jacob, and
he just texted me and said he's going with Jacob.
Okay. We'll watch you in the live stream just completely melt down when you're back up lock of the week. Get smoked. Next up at UFC Vegas 24, we have Ricardo Ramos versus Bill Algeo in an absolute barn burner. This is an absolute barn burner of a fight. And this is one of the very few times you will see the odds makers and DraftKings disagree. It's a very slight disagreement, but DraftKings says Ramos is the favorite. The odds makers say Algeo is the favorite. And that's just how close this is. It is razor thin. Nobody knows what direction to go here. I do. I'm positive. But what about you, Jacob? Why don't you tell us your incorrect pick?
I also know that this is going to be the fight of the night. I think this is absolutely easily going to be the fight of the night. Obviously, if we don't know if Gastelum shows up, the main event definitely could be, but I think this is easily the fight of the night. Ricardo Ramos is an absolute animal. That guy is just relentless with his takedowns. It's crazy. And even on the takedowns, if something happens, which is kind of alluding to what might happen in this fight, his scrambles are incredible. You just it always feels like he's the aggressive one and the one that always ends up in the better position. Bill Algeo, I just don't see that same kind of tenacity. I think he's a little bit cleaner. I think in this fight, everywhere, he's going to be just a step behind. I think in stand-up, he's a step behind. I think in the grappling, I think he's just not quick enough. I think he's a step behind. I don't like that. It seems in his stand-up, in Algeo's stand-up, it seems like he loves throwing kicks, which I think is going to be a recipe for disaster against someone as aggressive as Ramos. He's going to grab a leg, he's going to run through it, and you're going to be on your back. And Ramos, he works to finish fights. I think in his 14 wins, only 4 decisions. There's a lot of, and usually those smaller guys, they don't get the big knockouts. So a lot of finishes when you're at that smaller weight is very, very impressive. So I also don't like the way Algeo reacts to feints and his head movement. It seems like he gets hit a lot. I don't think Ricardo Ramos is going to strike a whole bunch. I think he's just going to work for takedown. But if he has to, I think there's opportunities there for Bill to get knocked out. So I think there's a lot of ways that Ricardo could win. And originally, he was my lock of the week. This was my original lock of the week. There was going to be a lot of, let me talk. There was going to be a lot of controversy behind it because he is the DraftKings favorite, but he is an underdog. Some books have him as a plus 115. Nobody. So technically he was going to be the underdog. So it would have worked for lock of the week, but I knew the backlash I was going to receive. So I had to go all in with Birchak. But Ramos, I feel very comfortable with him to be able to dominate this fight. Lots and lots and lots of takedowns. So he's in my lineup. I think this is definitely still going to be the fight of the night. And I have Ricardo Ramos backup lock of the week.
Yeah, man, it's almost like you read the notes with the wrong fighter on top, because my feedback is that Bill Algeo is relentless, just relentless. And he wants a dirty, ugly fight and just grind it out and make it happen. And with Ricardo Ramos's flashy, spinny nonsense, I think that could get him in trouble because he wants to dictate the pace. He wants to do the flashy spin stuff. And with Algeo just getting in there, keeping it dirty, staying in the pocket, and not letting him have his distance to do all the crap he wants to do, I think that'll be a problem for Ramos. So I think Algeo is the pick here. He is in my DraftKings lineup, $8,000 and 8,200. Whatever side you are on this fight, those are great prices for these guys, whatever side you're on, because they're both going to be busy as hell. It's going to be high volume output, and whichever one wins is going to score a ton of points, and the loser is going to do pretty well too, I imagine. But that's where I'm going, man. I think Bill Algeo wins, and I think it's because it's a dirty, gross, grimy fight. And I think Ramos may have issues with that kind of fight when he wants the distance to spin around and do all his fancy dance moves.
Come on, Dan.
I mean, I'll be honest on this fight. I mean, I know we have to make a pick, so I'm going to make a pick. This is a very, very close fight. I feel like it's a must play for DraftKings. You're getting either guy basically the same price, $8,000 or $8,200. It's going to be a ton of actions, scrambles. It's going to be everything. So I'm going to build my lineup and make sure there's around $8,000 or $8,200 left. And whoever I can afford will go in it. But my pick is going to, I got to go Ramos because my man Jacob over here, he's got the lock of the week going for 35 weeks in a row, right? Isn't that right? 35 weeks.
We just forget the losses, like they don't happen.
It's 47 weeks.
No, we covered this, Angelo. The loss didn't count because he beat a previous person that lost to a lock of the week. That means that he won the lock of the week. All right. We've gone over this a bunch of times. He's undefeated 47 weeks in a row. No, I think this is just going to be a crazy fight. I really actually I started watching some tape on these guys. I'm like, man, this is really tough to call. So I'm going to dig in throughout the week and really watch some more video of some previous fights and matchups. And, but I don't think you can go wrong either way. Cause I guess there could be a finish, but I think there's going to be a ton of points in a 3-round war is what I see in this fight. So,
let us know
who taking Ramos for now, and we'll see who fits in.
Let us know who you guys think wins. I'll throw a poll up on this one because This to me is the tightest one on the entire card. A lot of good matchups, a lot of close matchups. This one's this one's crazy to pick. Nick, who's not here because he's training for a fight that we can't announce just yet. He picked, who the hell did he pick?
Ramos.
He picked Algeo. So Nick went with Algeo. So we're split right down the middle, just like DraftKings and the odd makers.
Banana split.
It's a tricky one. I don't know what that was. It's a very tricky one. I'll put a poll up. I'm very curious to hear what you guys think. And then, when we do our final breakdown videos and our bets and stuff like that, we'll see if any of us have changed after we watch the weigh-ins. Next up at UFC Vegas 24, we have Jeremy Stephens versus Drakkar Klose. And this is an interesting one. It is a very close fight, honestly. The odds makers and DraftKings are going with Jeremy Stephens as the favorite. They think he's going to win. He's the tried and true vet, but he hasn't won a fight since 2018. So Dan, what are your thoughts on that? You think that's an issue? What direction are you going?
So, yeah, I mean, I do think that was an issue, that is an issue. But when I was looking at the odds when they first dropped, I was like, oh, of course, Jeremy Stephens going to be, a favorite in this fight. And then I looked up his record and he lost lost 4 of his last 5 and 1 was a no contest. But then I looked at the guys he lost to: Calvin Kattar, Yair Rodriguez, Magomed Sharapov, and Jose Aldo. So he's literally lost to all cream of the crop, top level guys. He's only 34 years old still, which, I mean, for the amount of fights he's had and everybody he's fought is pretty crazy. So it's not like he's that old. He did miss weight his last fight, which I think, had me a little concerned that I'm like, oh, maybe he's losing interest. But, after watching video, he looked good. He looked competitive in a lot of these fights. He's a very good striker. He hits hard. He's always aggressive, always pressuring. His defense is pretty solid. I think it's definitely better than Klose's. We'll get to that when we break down Klose, but he's got a versatile attack, leg kicks, body shots. He showed a couple takedown threats against Kattar. I don't think he got them. He may have gotten one at the end, but it just made me realize like it's in his back pocket as something he might be working on. That's one factor to consider. But the last thing on him is he's got a great chin. He got hit with a big right in the first by Kattar, and he ate it. I thought he was winning that fight until the middle of the second round. And then he got hit with a couple combinations, and then obviously that huge elbow that floored him. But that would have knocked down anybody, and he still wasn't out cold. He was like, he got up pretty quickly. So I think his chin is hopefully still there. Klose is also a good, powerful striker. He's won 3 of his last 4, and his only loss was to Beneil Dariush. He's got good striking, good boxing, really, some decent kicks. He's got solid wins over Mark Diakese, Bobby Green, Lando Venata. He hits hard, but I think the issue here is going to be his defense is a little suspect. He keeps his hands low. He's willing to kind of trade a little bit, again, kind of that take one to give one type of style. And I just don't think you want to do that against Jeremy Stephens. So, the fight against Beneil, the first round, he got his taken down, his back taken for the whole round. So whatever, scratch that. But the second round, he almost finished Dariush. But again, to my point, why I think he might lose against Stephens, he leaves himself so open in the exchanges that even when he had Dariush rocked, he just puts caution in the wind, leaves his hands down, and he's open to get tagged. So he ended up getting KO'd in that wild exchange. So I could see something very similar happening against Stephens. So I think that's going to be the factor. I think Stephens is just a more versatile, powerful striker. They both have probably equal power, but I think Klose's lack of defense will be ultimately what loses him the fight. And I think Stephens gets his first win since 2018.
Yeah, I tend to agree with most of that. I think, Jeremy Stephens is definitely the better striker. And I think the only path to victory here for Drakkar Klose would be to take Jeremy Stephens down. The problem is that's not that easy of a task. And even if you do take him down, he pops right back up. I mean, Zabit took Stephens down a bunch of times. But the key word is there a bunch of times because that means he popped right back up. Zabit took
The other
him down.
key word there is Zabit.
Well, exactly. So Zabit's a phenomenal wrestler. He took Jeremy Stephens down, and then Jeremy Stephens popped right back up, and then he had to do it again. And, he just couldn't hold him down. So I think Jeremy Stephens is the better striker, the more powerful striker, the more dynamic striker. Drakkar Klose will need to take it down to win the fight. And I just don't see it happening. And even if he does, I think Jeremy Stephens pops right back up. With that being said, he hasn't won in a very long time. You did mention he missed weight in his last fight. So I just don't know. Maybe his head is not in it anymore. Maybe he's getting a little older. He's not in title contention, and maybe it's just showing up to make a check kind of thing. And that obviously would be a problem against sort of a young, hungry Drakkar Klose. But I have to assume Jeremy Stephens is all in, as he always has been. And I think he wins this fight, and there's probably a stoppage here. He's not in my lineup, but I did have a note to try to get him in my lineup. So I'll probably switch some things around because 8,400 is not that expensive for a guy who wants to strike and will probably win by stoppage. But Jacob, what are your thoughts here, and how do you see it going?
Yeah, I see this. First of all, Jeremy Stephens is one of the toughest guys, definitely for sure, like in the division, but in the UFC period. And his chin is unreal. Dan mentioned the Qatar shots that he was eating was just like unbelievable. He gets stunned a little bit, but he does not go down very often. And Drakkar Klose kind of fights like a power puncher without power. It's very weird. He's got decent power, but he hasn't had a finish since 2015. So, you'd like to see that power transfer into knockouts and at least TKOs or something. I just think there's going to be too many exchanges without that finishing ability for Jeremy Stephens to get into with Klose. That I agree. I think Stephens is tougher. I think he throws faster and even harder. There's going to be too many exchanges. And I think Stephens finishes this fight. I think I even put a bet on Stephens to finish the fight. Originally I had Klose in my lineup just because watching Stephens, you see how often he gets hurt. He gets hit a lot. He gives them back, but he definitely gets hit a lot. And I'm like, okay, let me watch Klose and see what kind of power he's working with. And he just fights like a power puncher, but he doesn't have those finishing. And he had Dariush hurt, but then he got clipped. And if anyone's going to come back and clip you, it's going to be Jeremy Stephens. So originally I had Klose my lineup. I whipped all the way to the other side, and I like Jeremy Stephens to win the fight, but I didn't put him in my lineup.
Yeah, it's I'm definitely looking forward to it, and it should be a sort of a gunslinger. Dan, what's in the red Solo cup? You mentioned you're drinking beers. Why are you refusing to show us the can? What is it? What embarrassing?
I was drinking beers. I don't drink beers.
What embarrassing beer are you drinking that it's in a Solo cup?
We don't show them unless they sponsor us. No, cover the label.
Right. I mean,
look at that. Label. You just blew a Bud Light, Angela. Thanks a lot.
Cover the label.
My bad, guys.
If you guys want us to show the beer next time, send us a check and then we'll show the beer.
My bad.
Bud Light has been reaching out for months, and Angelo forces me to show Estella.
I'm pretty sure Anheuser-Busch has that deal. Anyway, it should be a fun fight. It should be a gunslinger. I'm legit looking forward to it. I don't have Jeremy Stephens in my lineup, but he should be in my lineup. And honestly, we'll see what happens with weigh-ins, and if there's drops, and I'll probably work him in. Next up at UFC Vegas 24, we have the main event of the evening between Robert Whittaker and Kelvin Gastelum. This is a very, very interesting fight. I don't want to say last-minute replacement because it wasn't last minute, but this originally was Robert Whittaker versus Paulo Costa. Kelvin has stepped in, coming off probably the performance of his entire career. I just don't know if he can do it again. What are your thoughts, Jacob? Do you see Kelvin just back-to-back amazing performances, or is Kelvin just good old, you'd have no idea what the hell he's going to do, Kelvin Gastelum?
Yeah, this one is very, very interesting because I think we would all agree that top to bottom, Robert Whittaker is the overall better mixed martial artist. I think he's a better striker. I think Gastelum could be the better wrestler, and I think that's one of the biggest question marks is I think really it's so weird with Kelvin, right? Because you see him win with the striking, but then he looks awful striking. You see him win with the grappling, and then he gets submitted. So I think his best path to victory is, at least last time he showed all the takedowns. So if you start you're feinting the takedowns, and then you throw those overhand rights that heavy wrestlers like to do. He's got the power that can catch Robert, and we've seen Robert get caught before, but on paper, Robert's I feel like just so much better everywhere. And it's such a more precise striker and definitely much, much more consistent. that I think you got to take Robert in this fight. And I think this is one of those fights that Gastelum is tough enough to where I think the odds even have, they see this going the distance. I don't think they see knockouts on either side for these guys, because they're both just so tough and they're both so good. They're both very, very good fighters. Obviously they both, one's a champion, one fought for the title. So, but with, I think they go 5 rounds and Robert's a better fighter. So if you think it's going 5 rounds and you pick the better fighter, I think he's got to be in your lineup. So I have Robert Whittaker in my lineup. I think he's a much better fighter, but I definitely wouldn't be surprised if Kelvin all of a sudden started getting takedowns and wins that way. I wouldn't be surprised if Kelvin's a good enough striker and definitely has the power to catch Robert and knock him out. So, $9,100 I think is a decent cost for Robert, just because he is a better fighter. But Gastelum at $7,100 is tough enough, and he can show up. That's definitely a live money there. So.
Yeah, it's interesting for sure. I mean, this breakdown is going to be like every other Kelvin Gastelum fight, where it's just all the questions about what Kelvin Gastelum's going to show up. What's he going to do? What's going to look like? Is he going to be the good one, the lazy one? Is he training? Is he not training? So there's just too many questions with him, and there always are. You mentioned he might be the better wrestler. He is the better wrestler. I mean, he wrestled D1 in college. Like, he's a very good wrestler. He's definitely the better wrestler without question. Will he use it or not? That's a question. But we've also seen Robert Whittaker beat phenomenal wrestlers. He beat oh my God, who's the Cuban? Who's the Cuban?
Yoel Romero.
Yoel Romero. He beat
but Yoel doesn't use his wrestling.
It doesn't matter. He beat Yoel Romero. He's beaten everybody in the last 10 years, whatever it is.
Brunson.
And we've seen him beat, Brunson. We've seen him beat good strikers in Darren Till. So we've seen him beat literally everybody, every style, every matchup, except Israel Adesanya, and he got caught. And I don't want to minimize the loss, because Izzy is very good, but he got caught in that fight. He didn't get picked apart for 5 rounds. So I just think Robert Whittaker wins this fight, even if Kelvin shows up and looks phenomenal, unless he is just crazy wrestle heavy. But even then, I imagine he'll gas, because he usually does. And then Robert Whittaker will start to take over and make it happen. So I think Robert Whittaker wins this fight. He is in my lineup, and I like him at $9,100. They could have charged $96 because he's a big time favorite. But I'll take him at 91. I imagine there's a ton of points here, and he has 2 extra rounds to do it. So Dan, what are your thoughts here?
Yeah, and I agree with basically everything you guys said. I mean, Whittaker has been on a tear. To me, Whittaker is one of those guys where it's like, watching him, you don't realize how great he is, but he is. There's nothing too flashy, but he does everything really, really well. I mean, the guy literally has 1 loss in his last 13 fights. That's just incredible, fighting at the level he's been fighting at. So
he beat Darren Till. We forgot that he beat Darren Till, the best fighter in the UFC.
Right. Jacob. Yes. Okay. Jacob's favorite fighter, Darren Till. No, I mean, he's beaten everybody. You said it well, Angelo. He's beaten wrestlers. He's beaten strikers. He wins fights. So, with that being said, I think he's going to win this fight, just because every time I start to second guess it, he still always wins. So I think he'll win this fight against Gastelum. But what I will say is, Gastelum is one of those guys where if he shows up, he's got a lot of skills. He's a talented dude. And I think a lot of his losses were due to whatever, not preparing correctly or not managing his weight. So I think he's one of those guys, if he's focused and comes in at his best, this could be an interesting fight. I think he could catch a big shot and score a knockout. He could grab, I mean, I think Whittaker's got the big edge wrestling here, but you just never know with Gastelum. So, and I think over 5 rounds, he's tough enough to where he's not going to get finished. So for DraftKings, I'm putting Gastelum in my lineup for the $7,100 because he's dirt cheap. It's a 5-round fight. And I think he's going to be competitive throughout 5 rounds with a chance of landing a big shot or winning the fight. So $7,100 is a great value with all of that upside. So I've got him in there. And then I spent money on some other expensive fighters to take instead of Whittaker.
So Gastelum is your DraftKings pick, but not the fight pick.
Correct. I think Whittaker will probably win the fight, but Gastelum from a DraftKings value, I think is well worth $7,100.
Yeah, if you look at it, Whittaker hasn't finished a fight since 2017, so that plays right into it.
Right.
Which also makes him a great DraftKings pick because there's 5 rounds to score all those points.
Right, of course, but he's $9,100. So it's like.
So we will get this question, and let's talk about it in the next video, in the breakdown video. Why not double this fight up? But we'll talk about it in the DraftKings breakdown video.
You could double it.
So it's an interesting matchup. It's an interesting fight. Kelvin Gastelum. Let's put it this way. It's only an interesting fight because Kelvin Gastelum is coming off of his greatest performance by far. And in that fight, if you watched him in that fight, you could have left that being like, wow, he could definitely be a champion. So that's what makes this whole thing so interesting.
Who did Nick pick?
Will that person show up? And Nick, who's not here because he is in full training camp right now, and we filmed this very late at night, picked Robert Whittaker. So all 4 of us across the board think Robert Whittaker is going to win this fight. Dan sees a lot of value in Kelvin Gastelum at $7,100 in DraftKings. So stay tuned. Check out the DraftKings video where we'll break down our full lineups and why, and we will talk about should you double up this main event. Before you go, check out the description below. In there, we have links to our Facebook, our Twitter, our Instagram, and more importantly, to our DraftKings League. Check out the league, join the league, participate in the contests, and as we get going and as you start winning, we're going to start handing out gift cards and participating and doing things like that. So check those out. Every week, there are drops on every fight card. So make sure you check out this channel and our social media on Saturday before the fights start so that you have our most updated lineups and picks.